Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and of course, Dark Legion Comics. So, there's a lot of suppression that's taking place in a wide variety of industries. It's taking place in the payment processors, it's taking place at Amazon, it's taking place in comics, all over the place. And so the thing you have to do when you are to the right of the squishy conservative George Bush, Jeb Bush sorts is that you have to accept the fact that you're going to come under attack from the left. It doesn't matter if you're a squeaky clean judge who's been cleared by 6 FBI investigations and you've been through various confirmations and you're sitting on the bench and that sort of thing, like Justice Kavanaugh. If that happens, if you threaten the narrative, if you threaten the left's power, they will come after you somehow. Maybe it'll be a legitimate reason if you give them one. If you don't give them something legitimate, they'll find something. They'll invent it if they have to. I have no doubt whatsoever that Blasey Ford character is absolutely lying. There are other women who have come forward who are lying. On the other hand, you have a situation like Gab, which I just posted about on my blog, and they're whining and crying about how PayPal and Stripe are coming after them because they violate PayPal and Stripe's terms of service. It's exactly the same thing that they were whining about with Google and with Apple. They are whining and crying about something that they're not only doing, but that they've bragged openly about doing. I quit using Gab because I didn't like being libeled. I didn't like the fact that they were, some very nasty individuals posting Photoshop images of my wife being gang raped. Pornographic images of this. And so when I told them, you need to take this stuff down, you can't permit people to post this sort of thing. And their response was, free speech, suck it up. Well, Stripe and PayPal are cutting you off. Suck it up. The thing is, there are rules, there are guidelines, and you challenge them at your peril. The fact that sometimes they're coming after you for stuff that is not just does not mean that everything they do is unjust. And so, when you are in a situation where you're being attacked in the culture war, you need to look at the nature of the attack and determine whether it's legitimate or not. I'll give you an example. There's a story about this on Bounding into Comics today. A couple weeks ago, this was right after the whole Comicsgate imprint, and 2VS claiming the trademark to Comicsgate and all that. This is after this. But we got an email and we suddenly saw that 4 of the digital titles, the 4 Gun-Ghoul Raising the Dead titles, had been blocked. It was very strange because, you know, we had just changed the logo. You know, we had that Comicsgate comics logo, and one of the things that came out of it was how it looked really good at a very small resolution. You know, like the Arkhaven one, you could identify it very easily. And the original Dark Legion logo was actually kind of, even though it was cool, it was kind of a muddy mess. And so we changed it. You can see this is the final version of it. We had a slightly simpler version of it initially. But we took the opportunity to change the logo. And we changed what was it was a rectangular logo with black on red that really didn't stand out very well. And we switched it over to this new logo. The problem is that whenever you make a change on Amazon, the content quality review has a chance to take a look at it. And what was bizarre was that suddenly all four of those titles, which we had just changed to the new logo, they all got blocked. And you know, this was very confusing because we didn't change any of the content. The content was exactly the same as it had been. The only thing that changed was the one Dark Legion logo to the new Dark Legion logo. So we were completely mystified by this, and then we went and checked the emails, and sure enough, there's an email from Amazon saying there's a copyright violation, and the titles are blocked until you get this resolved. Okay, so our first thought was, okay, whose copyright did we violate? And we went and checked our contract with the creator, Will Callaghan, and we confirmed with him that he had the rights from all the relevant artists and people involved. And then we realized that this was an SJW attack because there were 2 very important clues. Number 1, the print version wasn't affected. I mean, the crazy thing about the print version is Amazon is so slow about updating its metadata that as recently as 2 days ago, and it may actually be still the case, the image of the cover on Amazon still has the Comicsgate Comics logo on it. Now, that's not what you get if you buy it from Amazon. If you buy it direct from us, it comes with a Dark Legion logo on it. But, metadata is not necessarily the real thing. But the point is that we knew it wasn't a copyright issue because there's no issue with the print edition. And then the other clue that there was something else going on was the fact that a book that had been unpublished 5 times previously got taken down again. The funny thing is, we didn't even realize it had been taken down until we were going through the emails, because it got taken down and restored before we even knew that it had been taken down. But what that told us is that the SJW who was responsible for it, who was responsible for doing this back in 2017, had done it again, and he almost certainly was the person who was responsible for blocking the Comicsgate titles. See, some SJW, that SJW at Amazon, and dude, if you happen to be watching this, give it up. If you haven't lost your job yet, you're probably going to, because you got to cut this. You got to cut this shit out. I've talked to some of the managers at Amazon, and they don't like having to clean up after your messes. But the point is that he had obviously been paying close enough attention that he thought that there was a copyright issue, not unlike many of 2VS's followers, who were all like flipping out about copyright and trademark and all these other ridiculous things. And so they misled him into thinking there was a copyright issue. And so he went and blocked those 4 titles. So anyhow, the thing to keep in mind is these things happen. We didn't, throw a hissy fit. You're reading about this on Bounding into Comics and on my blog weeks after the fact, because we didn't go running around crying to everybody about it. We didn't go running out complaining about it. This isn't the first SJW attack we've endured. It's not even the 20th SJW attack we've endured. We know there will be future ones. And so what do? You anticipate there are going to be these problems, and you make plans to work around it. Just like a river. A rock drops in the river, the water routes around it. But it keeps flowing. However, you also need to be aware that these things are going to happen and anticipate these attacks. Is there a chance of saving a converged Star Wars or Marvel? No, none whatsoever. We have to build our new platforms. We have to build our new content. That's exactly what we're doing with Alt Hero. We are building new content. Regarding Gab, Torba says they want to build out their own payment processor. He's the only one talking about it yet. That's not actually true. And he's not repeating the statement often. There is no chance that Gab and Torba are going to be successful in building a payment processor. It's very difficult. They do not have the technical competence or the development mindset to do it. It's going to happen. People are going to build a alternative payment processor. There are alternative payment processors in Europe. But Gab is not going to do it. I can't speak for the veracity of some of the criticism that's been directed towards Gab regarding their numbers being faked and all this kind of thing. Who knows? I don't pretend to know. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if Gab turned out to be very much like Twitter and Facebook and be faking their numbers. But there is a huge market demand for alternatives, which is why those alternatives are eventually going to come into play. And so I'm not terribly worried about it. We've already been affected by some of this. Freestarter went down thanks in part to Stripe, but also thanks in part to the fact that Freestarter was not fully compliant with what the rules were. And so, again, you have to anticipate these things. You have to not give them an excuse to lower the boom on you. I'll give you an example. We've already done this. We knew about Amazon's Confederate flag policy. We knew that they have an official policy banning the Confederate flag. Now, this is not the Confederate flag. This is a superhero outfit. And so we figured it's going to be fine. But what we realized is with the way that our stuff was being targeted at Amazon, repeatedly targeted at Amazon, it wasn't that we were going to get banned by Amazon per se, but there was going to be an SJW who was going to use this against us. There would be an SJW at Amazon who would use this as an excuse to interfere with Alt Hero somehow. And the problem is we don't have the ability to simply not ship print books to Amazon. If we could, what we would do is we would just do one version, one Kindle version, and then we would do a separate print version. That's not an option. Not yet. And so, rather than go in there and stupidly challenge their policy, which admittedly, is not applied very closely. There's, they've banned a lot of stuff, but, there's still Dukes of Hazzard stuff and whatnot. And so what we simply did is we made sure that we are compliant with the policy. This is Rebel's revised outfit. It is very clearly not a Confederate flag, and so there won't be any problem with it. Now, there will be people, I have no doubt there are people who will claim that, oh, you're cucking, you're not standing up for principles and free speech and all this other stuff. Well, you can't expect any student of William S. Lind and Martin Van Creveld to commit themselves to blind, all-out frontal charges against emplaced machine gun positions, just to prove a point. You have to learn what battles you can win, what battles you can't, and when it's time to fight and when it's not. There were people who were disappointed with me that I didn't take on, that I didn't directly take on the Comicsgate guys and, fight for the Comicsgate trademark or imprint or whatever. It's not happening. The Comicsgate logo was of no interest to me whatsoever. We were doing that because we anticipated working at some point in time. In fact, we still anticipate, we are working with some Comicsgate creators. I thought they might like to be able to publish under a Comicsgate imprint. I don't care. Instead, they'll publish under Dark Legion. Fine. I'm not going to fight with anybody over that. Now, I'm perfectly aware that I live in Europe. The Confederate flag has nothing to do with slavery and race. It stands for rebellion. You see people flying it in the Ukraine and the Crimea. But the thing that you have to do is understand that as long as you want to sell through Amazon, you have to abide by their principles. So be it. And unfortunately, there's an awful lot of people who, in fact, some of the people who will get on our case for changing Rebel's costume refuse to buy from our direct store and insist on buying from Amazon. They are part of the very problem that they complain about. If you want to support what we're doing and you want us to be free to do it how we want, buy from Arkhaven Direct. Buy from Castelia House Direct. The books, we have gone to a lot of trouble to make sure that our print bookstore is You know, functional, works well. People quite like it. In fact, if you look right now, look tonight, look on Archaven Direct, and you will see hundreds of people have already bought Chuck Dixon's Avalon #2 Rule Breaker from Dark Legion Direct. Go look at Amazon. It's not on Amazon yet. Amazon's slow. It takes Amazon anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks to get our new books up there. We get our Archaven comics, our Castalia House books, we get them up on our direct store usually within 8 hours of the thing being submitted and approved. We've actually streamlined the process so much that we can submit a book for the first time, like now, in the European evening, submit it, get it approved in the morning, in the European morning, and have it on the direct store by this time the fall. We're getting it basically submitted, approved, through the whole process, and onto the store, and available for sale within 20 hours. We actually did that starting last night. Now, I've seen people say, well, how is it possible for PayPal or Stripe or anybody else to crack down on Gab when, half the pornographic sites out there probably use them? Look, you're not going to win the consistency game. They're not answerable to you. Pointing out that the left is hypocritical is not ever going to work, because they are hypocritical and they know it and they don't care. That's why they talk about the who-whom game. The left has different rules for the different people, depending upon whether they approve of them or whether they don't. They don't approve of us, and so that means they're going to drop the hammer whenever they think A, they have an excuse, or B, they think they can get away with it. So the important thing is to make sure that you don't give them an easy way to do it, and that you always have a backup plan or 2 or 3, and that you anticipate where your weaknesses are, because that's where they're going to attack you. And so I thought you were supposed to break the rules of your leftist hosts, get selectively punished, and then point out the hypocrisy. Isn't this how we win? Which big tech company do you think is the least converged? That's a good question. I would say probably Microsoft. Microsoft has in many ways become an Indian company, and so while they've got other issues, they're not really all that devoted to the whole diversity program. I mean, they're actually, they of course provide lip service to it, while they simultaneously hire their cousins and aunts, nephews, and whatever else. They're just not likely to crack down very heavily in the same way that some of the more SJW-driven companies are. Do you plan to stop selling on Amazon ever? I wouldn't say that we plan to stop selling there, but we are already significantly less dependent upon it than we were 1 year ago. For example, if we had to, we would be able to continue our operations without any connection to Amazon. In fact, we're already looking very hard at the numbers with related. We're looking very hard at the numbers related to Kindle Unlimited, because I'm not certain that it makes any sense for our books to be on Kindle Unlimited anymore. So, what do you think about Piero San Giorgio? I know him a lot better than you probably think. What do you think about his argument the world is running out of cheap oil will lead to migration and civil wars? I think that we're already at the point of migration and civil wars, with or without cheap oil. Piero's a very smart guy. If he says that we are running out of it, then there's a decent chance that he's right. But I don't know. I like Piero very much. We will be, we're working on translating and publishing one of his works. And so, he's a smart guy. He's a very smart guy. And so I would take his arguments seriously at a bare minimum. We have the Dragon Award nominated creator of Chicago Typewriter in the house. And he says that he switched over all of his shop links to Castalia House Direct. I appreciate that, and I wish all of our authors would do that. And what's amazing to me is how many of our authors barely seem to even be aware that we have their books for sale on the direct store, and often at a better price. 2 questions saying, haven't we been on the verge of running out of oil since the 1970s? Well, yeah, obviously. And so that's why there's reason to be dubious about peak oil and so forth. But, if you look at the amount of energy consumption in the West, and you then apply it to the entire global population, it's pretty clear that there has to be a lot more oil than we, something has to give. Those growing third world populations are not going to be able to consume in the same way that the first world has been consuming for the past 50 years. We're not really talking about peak oil per se. We're actually talking more about the growing demand and the ability to meet that demand. For example, even if the oil is there, the infrastructure isn't. So, there are other problems as well. Piero's focused on energy and that sort of thing. I'm actually, think about this. Even if you argue that oil is a replenishing substance, and here's the problem: the global population is transformed, and so is a global population with an average IQ that is 1.5 standard deviations lower than the Western norm able to maintain the same sort of infrastructure that is required to live and consume at the level that they want to? And there the answer is no. You know, even if the oil is there, the infrastructure isn't, and the ability to build and maintain the infrastructure isn't. And so it's entirely possible that that Piero is correct for the wrong reason. There's multiple possibilities here. What do you think of his strategy of escaping to a rural area? I think that that's the obvious thing to do. It's what I would do if I was living in a city. I don't live in a city. As should be obvious to those who have heard the miracle of the chickens. What comes first, Chinese genetic engineering or Western dysgenics? Well, you've already got the answer. Western dysgenics is here. The average IQ of the European nations and the United States has fallen somewhere between 8 and 16 points. There's a reason why we're not going back to the moon anytime soon. You know, we are literally less intelligent than Americans were back in the 60s. You know, we live in a actively dysgenic society. 2/3 of the most intelligent German women don't have children. You know, even if they didn't have any immigration issues, even if they didn't have any immigrants at all, their society would be dysgenic. Throw in a bunch of relatively lower IQ, you know, Arabs, Turks, whatever. You know, you've got a dysgenic civilization at this point in time. What is going to be extremely interesting is China moving into Africa. I suspect big things are going to happen in the next 20 to 30 years. It's going to be sooner than that and faster than that. A lot of people don't realize that China officially had a colonization plan and was openly planning to settle 100 million colonists in Africa. And the world, international opinion, criticized them for it, and so they publicly announced that they had withdrawn the plan. Well, based on the stories that I'm seeing about major ports and major infrastructure being turned over to the Chinese because the African nations can't service the debt on them, I think that the Chinese never changed that plan. I think that they are actively implementing the colonization and settlement of Africa. And I don't think that they are planning to, I don't think that they're planning colonial rule, let's just put it that way. We actually published a short story in There Will Be War, Volume 10, called 7 Kill Tiger. If the topic is of any interest to you, you might want to have a look at that. And so, you know, it's going to it's going to be interesting, and I think it's going to be possibly one of the biggest tragedies in human history. Now, I think that the tragedy was inevitable because, you know, the big contribution of the last 50 years to Africa has been, you know, increasing. Basically, Europeans and Americans have been feeding Africans and creating a lot more Africans than are even remotely sustainable by the Africans themselves. So with or without the Chinese involvement, there's almost certainly going to be a human tragedy of uniquely epic proportions in Africa. Whether the Chinese get involved or not, and and decide to help that process along or not, I don't know. I suspect that they will. When you're dealing with a nation that doesn't really seem to have minded killing 50 million of its own, I tend to doubt they're going to shed too many tears about killing an order of magnitude more people of another nation. So, someone says Beijing also has its sights on making Australia and New Zealand tribute states. Well, at this point, they might end up with Canada as well. Look at what's happening in Vancouver. Let's see. It's hard to want to have children with all this forecast of scarcity and war. Children are the only thing that you should be doing. I mean, it really amazes me and astonishes me how these people who, run around and call themselves white nationalists or whatever, and none of them have any kids. I mean, what are you doing? If you're concerned about the 14 words and all this other thing, the one thing you should do is find a woman and have children with her. Maybe you should lower your standards and not insist on, marrying a Victoria's Secret model, because you're not going to. I know a head of a university department who quit his job to join some large African agricultural program to encourage more growth. Yeah, that's called making the problem worse. Right now that guy from Iowa of Scandinavian descent, I can't remember his name, but he's the architect of the so-called Green Revolution, and he's praised and lauded and considered a great man for the wonderful job that he did in helping feed so many more Africans. I have a feeling that before too much longer, they're going to curse his name. We're not dealing with a difficult concept here. Hard to have children when you're impoverished. No, it's not. People all over the world do it all the time. It's hard to have children when you're impoverished and maintain your standard of living. You're making a choice. You're choosing stuff over the future. Norman Borlaug, that's right. Norman Borlaug is considered one of the secular saints of history. I doubt that status is going to remain very long. Vox, how have you stayed married so long without getting divorced? How do you juggle your projects with being a family man? I can't really speak for anyone else. I was fortunate. I met a woman that I genuinely love, that I still love. I have absolutely no desire whatsoever to ever be with anybody else. Sure, it's not always easy. There's disagreements. There's differences of opinion. Sometimes you're mad at each other and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, if you truly love someone, if you're truly committed to living with, making a life with someone, then you just don't even consider it as an option. But it does take two to tango. That being said, you got to take the risk. What are you worried about? You're going to lose some of your stuff? So what? If if Space Bunny walked tomorrow and took 75% of my stuff, it was still worth it. You know, you can't live life in fear. You know, you can't live life in fear of things going wrong. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, but you can't plan for it. You know, and the other thing is, don't be afraid to have more kids than you're planning to. You know, you know, now that I've reached 50 or so, you know, I occasionally wish we'd had more. So, but you know, the thing is that don't think about the alternatives and the possibilities and how things could have been better, and you know, dwelling on whatever it is you're missing out. You know, once you make your choice, ride or die. You know, and you know, especially if you're a man, realize she's a woman. She's going to behave like a woman. She's going to do things that you think are completely insane, but don't think there's any greener grass, you know, anywhere else. You know, that's, I mean, to me, that's the biggest mistake that men make, is that they, and women too, to a certain extent, but for men especially, it's amazing to me how many men get married, have problems, get divorced, get married again, and then they're shocked when they run into the same sorts of problems. Maybe not exactly the same issues, but you know, the same type of. And you know, I'm always a little bit puzzled, because it's like, you know, you're marrying a woman, right? You know, you can't expect her to behave like your best friend. You know, she's not going to handle being angry at you the same way. She's not going to have the same priorities and issues that your best friend does. So, but you know, the key thing is just dive into it. You know, focus on the stuff about them that you like. Focus on the stuff about them that you appreciate. Don't focus on the stuff that is suboptimal. Everybody's got, you know, suboptimal issues. Everybody's got problems. But everyone's got good points too. Focus on those. Let's see. It's being forced to give away 85% of your paycheck that scares dudes more than losing stuff you already own. No, it's not. I mean, for crying out loud, if you lose the bet, go make an interesting life somewhere else. You know, I mean, there's so many things that I would have liked to do. You know, join the French Foreign Legion, go explore Tibet. There's all kinds of things you can do. You know, the one thing you can't do is live the same life you had before as if nothing ever happened. Well, so what? You know, there are many, many ways that lives can change. You know, you can get hit by a car, you can fall in the shower, you can contract a chronic disease. Getting divorced is not the worst thing that can happen to a person in their life. So don't live in fear of it. Good women my age are very difficult to find. That's unlikely. Most likely your standards are too high. Men have a tremendous problem overrating themselves and not considering perfectly good women that are right in front of them, who will make excellent wives. because they want a woman who looks like a Playboy centerfold, but cooks well enough to be. I mean, look at yourself. Are you the male equivalent? If you're not, then stop aiming so high. Why are we so clueless about relationships? Because we have a overwhelmingly unrealistic attitude about them. We all have this Disney instilled idea of the way that relationships should be, rather than understanding that you're basically formulating a team to have kids and raise them. That's the focus. Too many people want right-wing trad wives. Maybe. I think the problem is more that too many people want, smoking hot right-wing trade wives, when you need only look at them to realize that they don't have a shot at that. Do you know if Alpha Game is dead? Yeah, I publicly announced that. I haven't posted. I don't plan to post there anymore. I explored the topic to the extent that I wish to, and I'm not interested in the endless conversation about, but what am I? Aren't I really an alpha? I've never had a girlfriend, and I can't really talk to girls, but aren't I really a secret alpha because I want to be and I'm really cool? That was not an interesting discourse. Joshua says, you're not a top 10% man, you will not get a top 10% woman. Exactly. So stop it. Learn to assess yourself correctly and pursue the right type of woman, and you will almost certainly be successful. Kate says, women also overvalue themselves. They too hope for a billionaire. Well, yeah, of course they do. I mean, women have a similar but slightly different problem. They have, they think that just because somebody's willing to fuck them, that they're willing to marry them or have a relationship with them or whatever. They need to realize that the kind of guy who's willing to settle down with them is probably 2 points lower than the most attractive guy who's willing to have sex with them. Uncomfortable perhaps, but deal with it. Why did we not get realistic expectations from our parents about dating and marriage? Because they were baby boomers. I mean, I have a whole series of rants I could go on about baby boomers, but and there's actually a serious one that I do need to address relating to our aging parents and how their unrealistic objectives and decisions are coming back to bite them in the ass already, and affecting us as well. But that's a topic for another time. Evan says, surely you will recognize I'm a Sigma and not a Gamma if I pester you for 10 months. Exactly. Let's see. Oh, please rant about baby boomers. Another time. We already need to bring it to a close. So, but here's the thing. Carl says, my parents gave me no advice at all about dating and marriage ever. I'm sure they didn't. Mine gave me absolutely useless advice. But you don't have to. You don't have to rely on it. There's plenty of sources of information out there. You just need to, swallow your pride and ask for it. I mean, for crying out loud, There's so much information on Alpha Game. I don't know why anyone even needs to ask me questions about that kind of stuff. I mean, it's pretty much all covered there. And if it's not covered there, then go ahead and ask. But Lamarck says, well, I'm going bald in my 20s. So what? So shave your head. You know? Own it. Okay, so you're bald, so you're probably not going to get a 9 or a 10. Fine. Then don't worry about it. Just, I mean, I'm obviously not exactly, I don't exactly have a full head of hair, but, back when I did, I actually had my head shaved for 2 years clean. I like how it looked, So, I mean, my favorite was when I was out at Glam Slam club that Prince owned, and this guy came over and said, "Are you a skinhead?" I said, "Is that a trick question?" He said, "No, I mean like politically." I'm like, "No, not particularly." Why? It was kind of funny because there's this very attractive half black girl who apparently wanted to talk to me. She was afraid to because she thought I might like punch her or something. That's like, women are actually less dissuaded by bald guys than guys think. I mean, yes, they do like the executive hair and all that sort of thing, but it's not quite as tragic and traumatic as the average young guy who's losing his hair thinks. So, anyhow, the main thing is that you've just got to make the most of what you have. Do the best with what you have, and don't worry that you can't do better. I mean, frankly, I always thought it was unfair that I didn't end up 6 feet tall like all my brothers. My dad's 6 feet tall. I always thought, I was going to be taller than him. Didn't happen. I honestly have never lost any sleep over it. It is what it is. You are what you are. Be the best you that you can be. But be realistic about your chances with the opposite sex, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, just sitting around moping that, you're never going to score a, NFL cheerleader or a model. I mean, so what? Mathematically, practically nobody was ever going to do that anyhow. So stop I think TV has harmed things a lot more than just about anything else. But anyhow, no, I'm not short. I'm just not 6 feet tall. I mean, that's why I always think it's funny. People would, people were saying, "Oh, you're short, you're fat." I'm like, I'm exactly the same size as my favorite NFL cornerback. I mean, I'm not, I'm not a little guy. I'm not out of shape. So I have no idea where they were getting this idea from. But anyhow, I need to get going. But have a good evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream. Also, for those of you who are into the comics, I should mention that Chuck Dixon's Avalon #2 Rule Breaker is now out in print, gold logo edition. You can find it on Arcaven Comics Direct. Have a good evening, and we'll see you the next time.